Hello, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. Well, the show is live, and so am I. I'm Mike Migliore. I'm here with Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the Talking Machine. We're going to start off as we usually do with our What's on Your Mind segment. Al, what's on your mind?
Well, it's not an inside joke about Mike Lazarus II Migliore. Today I got a phone call from Chip Hayner, not knowing that I had a text that Mike had passed away. Somebody got his phone at the VA hospital. We're investigating that right now. We have people working on that. So Mike's alive. The rumors of his death are greatly exaggerated, to paraphrase Mark Twain. Andy Sebastian gave me that line. I'm not afraid to give him some credit for that. And all Mike's friends and followers are happy to hear that he's alive, well, at least as far as I know.
I'm sure there's a lot of people disappointed, too.
And I'm not disappointed tonight. I'm glad he's here. But what's on my mind is, first of all, the draft. We'll get into that a little bit later. We had an inside man in the draft, Smoking Jim Frazier, who gave me a few little texts. So I got some inside information. It was worthless, but I'm happy with that. And then the other thing on my mind is we have a baseball team that's barely above the Mendoza line. And all of you people that don't know what the Mendoza line is, you have to research it. And then you can call into the show, 412-831-3304. But Chip and Mike break out that Pirate bandwagon. I'm just about ready to climb on board. 2 games under 500. And I got to eat a little bit of crow. Alvarez has 5 home runs in the first 22 games. Now, he's not hitting too much. Again, he's close to the Mendoza line. But I'll give him some credit. Just imagine if they had some hitting. And that's what's on my mind.
Well, Jim, you had a big Thursday night at least. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Magic Mike. I'll be real quick. Hey, I had the opportunity again to spend the draft with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, they did what they did again in the draft, but what made me feel real good was spending time with former Penn State great Tom Bradley, that played and coached at Penn State for most of his life, and he's now a consultant with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I tell you what, the guy just is a wealth of information in terms of former Penn State players and what they're doing and what they're going through. And so we had a good time. And also they brought back former #1 pick in 1995. You guys remember the second-round pick was Cordell Stewart, but the first-round pick in 95 was Mark Bruner. Mark looked like he could still play, was in good shape, and former Washington University football player, and we end up getting a guy in the 4th round from Washington University. So it was good hanging out with Tom Bradley and Mark Bruner and many of the other folks down there on the scouting staff of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's what's on my mind, Magic.
Thanks, Jim. Chip, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind, and as a result of the sick practical joke that was played on Mike, it makes you think about some of the things that you would have liked to say to somebody in the instance that they may not be around anymore. And what I would like to personally do is thank Mike for bringing me on to the show. He invited me to be a guest several months back, and they've welcomed me as a regular guest, and I want to send him my sincere appreciation and thanks for that. But to speak to some of Alan's points, what's on my mind is look at the first month of the baseball season's over with, and the Pirates are 10-12, which is a respectable place to be in right now if you look at the rest of the standings in the Major League Baseball. And Pedro Alvarez, who some people on our panel felt that should have been sent down to the minor leagues, has 5 more home runs than the $21 million man in Los Angeles. That would be Albert Pujols. I almost set off a fireworks display the other day when Pedro made it over the Mendoza line, and he raised his batting average. And, the Pirates are playing competitive baseball right now. And really, this is all that you can ask out of this team. And I think as the season progresses that the team will be competitive as the year goes on. And I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch as the year goes on. But that's what's on my mind right now.
Thanks, Chip. Well, let me tell you what's on my mind. First, I really appreciate when somebody does a good job, when people excel at what they do when people put a lot of effort in what they do and take pride in what they do. I want to send a shout out to George Hetler, who works at the deli in the Giant Eagle near South Hills Village Mall. George cut my lunch meat exactly the way I asked for it, and I really appreciate it when somebody does that. So George, thanks a lot. What else is on my mind is, as these guys talked about earlier, somebody got a hold of my cell phone early today and sent out a text message that was supposedly from my mother saying that I'd been killed in an accident. Obviously, that's not true. I'm here. It went from the cell phone to Facebook to all over the planet. Actually, I mean, I knew I was that popular, but it's kind of cool to see it in action.
Can you fit his head in the screen, fellas?
Let me
adjust that, please.
Let me give a shout out to whoever did that. I don't imagine that you know who I am or that I know who you are. I don't imagine probably that you even watch the show or get it on YouTube or whatever. But if by some miracle I should find out who you are, I'm going to start with your family. And when I get to you, to quote one of my favorite movies, I'm going to get medieval on your ass. But I would like to give out another shout out to Tyler, who works at the Verizon store down on Mount Lebanon Boulevard. Tyler got into my cell phone and sent a text message out to all those people retracting what this other yo-yo sent. So Tyler, thanks a lot to you too. And well, we've had again another pretty big sports week. We've got the NFL draft to talk about. So I guess we should probably get started there and probably start with our NFL scout. Jim, yes. What was it like in the war room?
well, Magic Mike, I tell you, like I share with a lot of people, the first thing I do when I go in, was my 10th consecutive year with the Steelers, and all their cooks are black, so I always get me a nice big steak and a omelet made the way I like it. And as soon as I walked in the war room, I seen that the Steelers had a number one grade on Mike Adams, a 6'7", 325-pound offensive left tackle from Ohio State. So the first thing I put on the board was that he was soft. And so I didn't think I would make it past that. I didn't think I'd get a second steak after that. But in the first round, the Steelers did a great job in drafting David DeCastro. He was the number one offensive guard by most people. Of course, nobody watches more film than I do. I watch 2 college football games every day on tape. So I have a little bit of concerns about DeCastro. My only concern is when I went back and watched the 2011 bowl game, Stanford versus Virginia Tech, he had an excellent game. However, with Stanford winning 7-0, and a ball on the 5-yard line, he was bull rushed by John Graves, a defensive tackle from Virginia Tech, and he sacked Luck for a safety. So my only concern is if you look at the build on David DeCastro, great finesse ball player. They comparing him with Alan Faneca. There's no such Alan Faneca in this draft. DeCastro is going to work hard. He's going to get on you, but when you have to play the Baltimore Ravens, who have 375-pound Terrence Mount Cody, and also 350-pound Samoan, and when I talked to DeCastro, he told me that he was a lifelong Seattle Seahawks fan, and he's hated the Steelers after they beat them in Super Bowl 40, but facing Baltimore twice a year, he may hate the Steelers again.
Well, I don't know. Like again, I had predicted earlier that that the Steelers would take Cordy Glenn. I did that because I did not expect David DeCastro to be available at that point. I really thought that he'd be probably gone in the first 10 picks. But I think he's a good pick. Aside from what Jim told you about the safety, I think he's a very good pass blocker. He's not a bad run blocker either, but he doesn't really have a drive block. He's not. Seems like his lower body strength might not be that great, but people have to get around him. I think that he's a good pickup. Obviously, better than anything else they have on the offensive line at this time. So I think the number one pick. I think they were very lucky to be able to get him at that point. And I think that, since he was there, he was the obvious pick. So.
Well, the problem with the draft is, okay, we've drafted, 9, 10 players, and, it's hard to determine, how many or if any of these guys are going to make any kind of an impact in the NFL. They did address most of what their immediate needs were. Everybody knew that we needed somebody in the running back department, and is this kid Ramey the answer? Time will tell. DeCastro was a solid first pick. Didn't think he was going to be available the 24th round, and they were smart to snatch him up. But it's really it remains to be seen. But I do like the fact that they addressed all the needs they did instead of trying to do it via free agency, because the free agency they've been bringing in lately, they've been paying too much and getting very little return on the dollars that they spend.
Now, you have any thoughts on DeCastro?
Yeah, I think we needed somebody like that. I thought we could get it through free agency or somebody that didn't get drafted. So I'm happy that they were able to get somebody like that. And, if he proves that he's worth it, that'll be great. And, we needed to fill a lot of these gaps that we do have, because there is a changing of the guard, as you guys have mentioned many times, and the scout here tells us all the time. So they did address those needs, and like Chip and everybody else says, whether it works out. Now, the question mark is this Mike Adams. Did he become a man, or is he still going to be like Santonio Holmes? So those are some questions that will have to be decided. And then you never know who they've had on injured reserve or whoever's on their taxi squads that they bring up, that maybe it took them 2 or 3 years to learn the system, and then they can start playing. So it'll be nice to see the competition out there, and I think they added to that competition level at this point in time.
Well, I don't let Jim get to Adams in a minute there, but in the question whether or not if he's a man or Santonio Holmes, Santonio Holmes was Super Bowl MVP. So I don't know if you really need a man as much as you need a Super Bowl MVP. Jim, I know you
meant the character of the guy.
I understand, exactly. Jim, you had some thoughts on Adams?
Well, Mike Adams is the only guy in the draft that I know that smoked more herb than Snoop Doggy Dogg. Hey, listen, even Bob Marley would have passed the drug test at the NFL Combine. Wow. So not only is this guy soft, but he's not a very intelligent guy. And I don't have a whole lot against these young guys that smoke the weed. I mean, they're going to smoke the weed. I have a problem with the tape that I see on Mike Adams. Number one, this guy, he gets beat, but he looks like a human turnstile most of the time at left tackle. So it's obvious that he's not going to be able to play left tackle at this level. I did not like the draft for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like Marcus Gilbert from last year. But now you drafted Marcus Gilbert in the second round last year. You have him at left tackle. Now you draft a guy in the second round to start. When you draft a guy that high, you're looking for him to come in and start immediately, and he's a left tackle. And the last time I looked, and Chip can help me out, there's only one left tackle on the team. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, make up your mind. Is Mike Adams a bust, or is Marcus Gilbert a bust? You can't have one without the other. One of those guys is going to go down in history as a bust, a high-paid bust, and it's a waste of second-round pick, because you have other areas of need. If you got Marcus Gilbert from last year at left tackle, keep him there. If you don't have a left tackle, then if you draft Mike Adams to be your bust this year, then you do it. So you got 2 young guys, second-round picks playing left tackle. That's crazy. Kevin Colbert did a terrible job in the second round this year.
Hold on, though. Don't we have a subpar offensive line and go to Super Bowls? So I think they're just playing to their strength.
Well, we've had subpar offensive lines that went to the Super Bowl based on Bill Cowher's coaches, Bill Cowher's players, and Bill Cowher's systems. What you have now is very few Bill Cowher players left because they ran most of them out of the door and old age got to them. And now you have an influx on Kevin Colbert's players from, if you go back to 2007, 2008, and 2009 draft, you'll see there's very few players who still on the Pittsburgh Steelers team from those drafts. And that's the reason why before everybody was loving those drafts, I gave it a D-.
Right.
And if you go back in history, I was right.
One question on Coach Kugler, the offensive line coach. can he work some miracles like he's been doing with these guys and the caliber of players that we have?
What miracles has he been working? He's only been here 2
Well,
years.
12
and
and,
I think
12 and 4.
Yeah, 12 and 4
last
12
year.
and 4. However, he did not work. If you look at
How do you grade it is what I'm getting at.
well, I was high on Coach Kugler. Don't get me wrong. He's better than the last coach that we had that sent internet porn to all the executives in the National Football League. So that was an upgrade there. Kugler does a good job of having his kids play for North Allegheny. I think that's the best thing that he's done. He's created some All-American kids. But if you look in terms of what he's done as a coach, other than Pouncey, he hasn't done anything. These guys have was able to get the hotel out of retirement. He stepped right in. He did not do much job in coaching the hotel. And then he brought in soft guys who were cut, like Trey Essex and Starks, and they were able to fill in. But Kugler has yet to develop anybody and take them to the next level, so maybe he'll do it this year.
Well, kind of in defense of Kugler, I mean, to be honest with you, how many different starting combinations has he had over the last 2 years? I mean, he hasn't started the same 5 consistently. And it would be nice to see if he could get 5 guys in there and work with them and actually get them working as a unit instead of every other down somebody's limping off the field. And you don't really ever find out what kind of cohesiveness that they need, because the teams that have the successful offensive lines play more than 3 or 4 downs together per game.
Well, I can't give somebody credit on what they haven't done yet. You know what I mean? I can only buy the steak, not the sizzle. I'm not knocking Kugler in general, but what I'm saying is, which comes first, the tree or the apple? The apple comes from the tree, so it all goes back to Kevin Colbert. Kevin Colbert has done a horrible job addressing the offensive line. My philosophy, and Kevin knows it, I don't believe in drafting offensive linemen necessarily in the draft. Why draft offensive linemen when you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? You've come from guys like Mike Webster and Dermontti Dawson and all these great offensive linemen. People want to come here if we're going to run the football. This is the steel curtain, the Iron Men. So why don't you grab you a couple veteran free agents every year that you have tape on, that you know that they can play in the National Football League, instead of bringing in Trey Essex. If fat was a crime, he'd get the death penalty, and you keep bringing the same bum back time and time again, and nobody's criticizing Kevin Colbert.
Chip, getting back into the draft, Mike Adams. What thoughts on Mike Adams?
Well, I think Mike Adams. I know, Jim's pretty down on him, and I haven't watched any tape on him, so I can't speak. But he's going from a different world. Playing college ball at Ohio State. Half the games they play are against teams that are grossly inferior to them, and he can afford to take plays off. He's coming into the NFC North, and you cannot take a play off. He's going to be going up against real men every day, and he's going to have to play every down. And it'll be interesting to see if he's up to the task, because if he wants to play at this level, he's not going to be able to take a down off, because he'll end up with somebody's cleat marks up and down the front and back of his jersey.
Well, as far as Mike Adams, I don't know. I think that he's an adequate offensive lineman. Definitely not a number 2 pick. The Steelers probably could have got him in the 4th round, the 5th. They might even been able to get him today. You have to think that anybody that knows he's going to the combine and is still going to fail a drug test, you think you could hold off for a few days, right? That leads me to believe that he's not all that smart. On the other hand, he went and met with the Steelers and told them that he wouldn't want to take his signing bonus for X amount of years or whatever. That's pretty smart, because if you want to get on the Steelers, appeal to their money, because that's what they're all about. So you have an up and down there.
Nice.
Now, the one thing that I will say for Mike Adams, is that the people that he has to beat to get on the offensive line are Trey Essex, Doug Legursky, Gilbert. I think he'll probably get a spot, but I don't think he's worth a 2nd round pick. 3rd round pick, Sean Spencer. I can't believe anybody picked him at all. I think that he's a small linebacker, no strength whatsoever. He will get pushed around a lot. Again, that's my opinion on him. I think that's a totally wasted pick.
Well, he was the weakest guy in the combine. He only did 12 reps at 225 pounds, which is, real soft for a linebacker. And, I was able to talk to Spence on the phone. I was shocked by the pick because I had him actually projected as a strong safety because he came to the University of Miami as 195 pounds. He played at Northwestern. I told you guys I used to go to the Soul Bowl all the time, Northwestern High School versus Jackson High School. He played for Northwestern's undefeated team. They won the national championship in high school. So 11 of their starters got scholarships to the University of Miami, and they were disappointments, including the quarterback. But, he played most of his career. The Steelers want to convince you that he's 231 pounds. They brought him in on Saturday. So I was able to look around. I thought he was just one of the cooks. I mean, he was very small.
Hold it, the cooks are black.
Yeah, and he was there. That's what
They're
big. Bring me some cornbread. But
Did he?
It was actually him. He's very short. And I talked to Keith Butler, who I think is a hugely overrated coach. I was so hoping that he would get to take the defensive coordinator job with Indianapolis and get out of here. He's trying to convince me that Larry Slowafoot will be able to step in for Ferrier next year. All these young guys that they've been drafting at linebackers, he has no plans for them. He's not coaching them up. Now you draft a guy who's only played outside linebacker his entire life. Now you want to move him inside in the National Football League like it's easy. And I don't think that this guy will ever be able to, like Magic Mike said, take on blockers. But he's going to be a great special teams player, just like the last 12 linebackers that they wasted draft picks on.
Chip, Sean Spence.
Don't know enough about him, and the problem is that he's weak. You get him into the weight room, and maybe in a couple of years he might make the taxi squad. But I don't necessarily think that he was the best fit for them. It was kind of ironic that everybody said how good of a pick fit Hightower was going to be if he was drafted by the Steelers. A lot of people were looking at them to pick him in the first round, and when they took DeCastro, it was interesting to see the Patriots snatch up Hightower immediately afterwards to make sure nobody else got him.
That was interesting how they moved up just one spot to grab him right after the Steelers to rub it in. And they had no cameras on that either, so they didn't see the sidelines. So that was appreciated. But as far as Spence, I'm so disappointed we didn't get a wide receiver for our second or third pick. And there were some out there, but they didn't do that. So to see them get Spence, I don't know why they wasted the pick there.
Well, brings us to number 4.
Woo!
Alameda Tomau. I think this is the best pick in the draft. Not necessarily the best player in the draft, but they get this guy in round 4. Fills an immediate need. Good player, big player, good pass rusher. Kind of developing on that. He does more of a bull rush right now, but he's working on the swim move, and he'll learn that with the Steelers. Great run stopper, and he will tie up two blockers on every play, which is what the Steelers like, so that their linebackers can get in on the quarterback. I think this was a great pick. Like I said, I think it's the best pick in the draft.
I think it was equally as good of a pick as them being able to get DeCastro in the first round. They figured he'd be long gone, and everything I read about this Malu, however you pronounce his name, and I'll figure that out by the time training camp comes around. But he was the best nose tackle in the draft, and to see that they could get him in the 4th round, either a lot of people were sleeping or the Steelers were really on the ball in that pick.
And whether they get a Samoan at 350 pounds or not, I call him either Foo or Palamu. So I'm not going to try to learn his name. I love this guy. I got to agree with Magic Mike. Of course, I was going to say similar things at his wake, how much we agree with each other. But I tell you what, this was a no-brain pick. I call up Foo. I called the Samoan up on the phone, and he shared some insights with me. Told me that he played in the high school all-star game with DeCastro. He was real excited about being reunited with David DeCastro, and he talked glowingly about Casey Hampton. He said he patterns his game after Casey Hampton. He looks up to Casey Hampton. So I asked the Samoan, I says, hey, who are you going to be more excited to meet, Casey Hampton or Troy Polamalu? And he didn't stutter. He said Troy Polamalu is all his coaches down there tells him that Troy is the best Polynesian and Samoan player ever. And he even gets back, the Samoan even gets back to the islands in the South Pacific every year. So I'm excited about him. He's 350 pounds, and I haven't seen a bad Samoan on the football field. So I'm looking forward to him. And plus, Casey Hampton is often out of shape. He took a long time to get his third ACL surgery done this year. So I think that the guards will be turning this year. So it was a great pick in the 4th round. What a steal.
Yeah, I think a huge pick there. Al, any thoughts on
I have a couple
Ta'amu?
thoughts. That'll be unanimous here. I agree with you.
Oh, there's my question.
And the other point about it, I had doubts about Casey Hampton even surviving on the team, because with his third ACL and just the shape that he's normally in, I didn't think he'd be able to come back on time, first of all, and then he delayed his surgery. So what's up with that?
Yeah, I don't know if Ta'amu patterns his game after Casey Hampton. He's probably eating something right now. But I think that he'll come to camp in shape. I think that he'll make the run on the first day. Casey Hampton never did that. I think this is just, again, a great pick. And the University of Washington routinely puts out great NFL defensive linemen and offensive linemen. So this guy's going to come to the Steelers knowing what he's doing. I think he'll fit in great. And, I mean, the defensive line needed a lot of help.
And one thing else he did share with me, Magic Mike, that you guys will love is after 4 years at the University of Washington, he told me he's only 30 credits short of a degree.
Only. Wow. He's an honest man, too. Is he in the right place?
I don't think he'll go back to finish up.
Did he say what degree that was?
Yeah, what was the degree? What's he minoring in? PR with the Steelers.
Well, if Ta'amu was the best pick of the draft, well, in the 5th round, the Steelers made up for it because they took Chris Rainey, running back from Florida. I believe he was the worst running back in the draft. I'm not sure. I'll have to go to Jim for that. But I'm relatively sure that this guy will be fairly useless, except possibly as a kick returner.
I was real surprised at the pick. Casey, Maurice Pouncey was calling in and tweeting every about hour trying to convince the Steelers to take his foster brother. But I tell you what, the guy is going to be very fun. He's very good with the media. First thing I asked him, because he was a track All-American at the University of Florida, so I asked him, could he outrun Mike Wallace? And he says, yes. And he also told me he could run the 40 in 4.1, even though he ran a 4.37 at the Combines. He must have slipped that day. But and he's also the brother of Keith Smart, who a lot of people know from the XFL as He Hate Me. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But this guy is fast. He'll be immediately on kickoff returns. Pittsburgh Steelers want to get Brown off of punt and kickoff returns if they can. I don't know why, because he's all pro at that. But I guess they feel like as a starter, they don't want him taking a chance on getting injured on special teams. So Rainey automatically will be on that. But they actually drafted him to be the 3rd down back to compete with Noelle Moore. And don't forget Byron Batch last year from Texas Tech. But I don't know how you take on a linebacker the size of Hightower when you're only 180 pounds soaking wet. So I have to agree with Mike on that.
Fall down and trip and fall down in front of him and he trips over.
Well, you just tell Ben one thing, look out!
That's what usually happens.
Those them lookout blocks, just like his former teammate Marcus Gilbert.
Wow.
Chip, what do you think?
The only thing that he's got going for him is speed. The only option that they have for him is a kickoff or punt returns, and they do got to get Antonio Brown out of that position because, right now, after the way he performed last year, he's way more valuable to the Steelers as an offensive wide receiver. Opposite of Mike Wallace, maybe now that Antonio Brown will be getting more attention, Mike Wallace might find some way of getting open again.
Al, what do you think?
Well, what I think is we still didn't pick a receiver, and we needed somebody for, I think, that notorious bubble screen that we have. So I think he'll be so short and small, and he's quick, he can go out there for about half a yard and maybe pick up a couple. They won't see him. You can't hit what you don't see. So, I mean, that may help there. And he does have Pittsburgh bloodlines here, so that does help with family and friends. And sometimes the Steelers put a pick out there for that. And I always have to change subjects a little bit since the Steelers pick some family favorites like foster children and everything. Gino Gradkowski was picked by the Baltimore Ravens, so congratulations to the Gradkowski and Del Sardo families for getting another boy in the NFL. I wish them luck.
Thanks, Al. Rainey's small, he can't block, and he's a terrible out of the backfield receiver. So unless they're going to put him on special teams, another bad pick. And I'll tell you one of the reasons that he's probably not going to get on special teams because their number 6 pick was Tony Clemens, wide receiver from Colorado, and probably the only place that he has on the team is in special teams as a punt kick returner. And I think he's a little bit faster than Rainey. And he's definitely taller, and he's not a bad receiver as far as that goes, I guess. He's not going to replace any of the guys they currently have, but
maybe the reason they took these people in the draft was just to give them cap room because they're going to pay them all the minimum so they can afford to pay some of their stars a little bit more money to keep them around and try to keep the core of this team together, see if they can get another run to making it deep in the playoffs next year.
Well, the Steelers didn't have a 6th-round pick, but like Mike said, that was their 6th pick. They traded their 6th pick to move up in the draft to take the Samoan in the 4th round. But Tony Clemens was my pick. I was pushing for I was actually pushing for Derek Moy, team captain and wide receiver from Penn State, 6'5", 200 pounds, 2-time state sprint champ. He can give you that big target in the red zone. I couldn't believe that he was still there in the 7th round, but the Steelers were a little bit more high on Tony Clemens, I guess because they figured since he transferred from school to school that he wouldn't mind relocating again. But Tony 6'2", about 210 pounds. He runs a 40 and 4.36. We go way back. He's been on my shows ever since he was in junior high school. He was a parade All-American coming out of Valley High School. His mother used to model for my fashion group. Whoa, she's fine. But so
can we go off subject and hear a little bit here?
So we were going to have Tony. We'll get Tony to come here on our show several times here at BP TV. So we're going to add a little bit of color here.
More color. More.
And everybody's going to love him. He's actually been for the last 2 years at Colorado. He's got the media report as the best interview guy, so he's going to be colorful. He's going to be a lot of fun. And I tell you what, I think he has a teammate. I talked to overrated coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, Scotty Montgomery. He's just happy that Hines Ward is no longer on the team because Hines was older than him and he couldn't tell him what to do because he was his elder. But I asked Scotty Montgomery about Clemens, and he says, hey, he's going to make the team. There's a couple of openings left. I mean, somebody got to make it. They don't have enough receivers. They want to keep 6.
You mean they picked one
they
now?
Only got 4
Finally.
on their roster. So Tony Clemens is going to make the team. Like Magic Mike says, he's going to compete as on special teams with Rainey as well.
All right. Well, I guess tight end David Paulson, the number 7 pick. He's small, doesn't seem to be much of a blocker. But I guess in the 7th round you have to pick somebody. Guys, what do you know about him?
That kind of confused me. Is why they took a tight end. They picked up that kid Pope from Kansas City that was playing for Haley, and they've got Johnson, and they've got Heath Miller. I mean, I think you've got a few too many tight ends on the team. It surprised me that they would put a pick on a tight end. So, excuse me, that's a head scratcher as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I talked to Todd Haley several times during the draft. The first 5 times I offered him a comb to see if he would want to at least try to comb his hair. This guy is an absolute bum, even around the Pittsburgh Steelers facilities. He dresses like a bum. He looks like a bum. But what he told me was, I talked to him for probably 2 hours over the course of 3 days, and he told me nothing that I could even use. So, I mean, this guy can talk about so many things and don't tell you anything. He couldn't tell me if he was going to use a fullback or not. Did
you ask him, are you using a fullback or not?
Yes.
What did he say then?
Just what you're saying.
He said, I couldn't tell you.
Did you ask him a 9-iron or a wedge?
Yeah, that's what I should have asked.
He used the putter.
But now, this guy, I tell you what, I don't know what's in the water in Upper St. Clair, but they need to get the water pumped in from Bethel Park, that good water, because this guy basically is hoarding his brand new playbook, and it's the same playbook that got him fired from Kansas City. So this guy, he's not even given anybody his playbook yet. So he did give a copy of his playbook to DeCastro and Mike Adams, and because DeCastro and Adams, don't forget, they're on a quarter system at their school, so they're not even, after rookie mini camp this weekend, they're not even allowed back into the facilities until mid-June after their team, after their school class graduates. So that's going to be a long time, man. I think DeCastro will get into the books. I think that I don't know if Mike Adams will be able to find his playbook after a couple of weeks. So, and he's not, and the veterans haven't been given the playbook yet. So, but this draft, from what I've gotten from Todd Haley, is he's looking at this tight end to maybe play a little fullback. And again, this is a fullback. If he does play fullback, he's somebody else that will get stuffed in the hole.
Don't you think that Aaron Batch would fill that role a little bit better than he would?
Well,
Batch was standing up James Harrison at training camp before he blew out his knee last year.
Well, I would like to see film on that. I know that was heavily reported, but it's amazing that the next day he blew out his knee, so we couldn't get really evidence of that.
Another conspiracy theory at the Steelers camp.
But Batch, again, like Chip says, I know that everything that I've seen from Batch from Texas Tech, he should have went a lot higher than when the Steelers got him in the 7th round. He's a great all-around guy. He got great hands. He got a great football IQ and did an excellent job. So I think that he would have been the 3rd round back had he not gotten hurt last year. And now that if he comes back 100%, and I don't see why not, I agree with Chip that he's going to be the 3rd down back. So there's a couple of guys that they drafted that it will just be wasted picks again.
Maybe they're just coming up for the camp, that they get to be, a little bit of meat there for the emperor, and then they're gone. Because I don't understand why you would pick an undersized, tight end either. That didn't make sense to me. Some of the picks in the draft don't. So it just makes me wonder with that.
Well, their last 2 picks, Terrence Frederick, quarterback from Texas A&M. They could probably use a cornerback. I don't really know an awful lot about him. And their last pick, Kevin Beacham, guard from SMU, which I think is not too bad a pick for that late in the draft. Again, they need offensive line help. He may be able to provide some. There's not a lot of people he has to beat out.
One of the things that he'll be able to provide is that he'll be able to be in camp. He'll be able to work out with the Steelers, up until the other 2 are allowed after their senior classes. So he may end up being a little bit further along and understanding the system and working with people a little bit more comfortable by the time they get to camp, because things will be more natural to him. He won't have to read and react. He'll just play football because he's been practicing for the last 2 months.
And I agree 100% with Chip. But I'll first go to the cornerback, Fredericks. Terrence from Texas A&M. They wanted a Willie Gay clone, and they got one. Terrence is short and makes up for it by being slow, just like William Gay. So that was a wasted pick. But Kelvin Meacham was the steal of the draft. This guy got first or second round value. I don't know how he slid almost the most insignificant as the last pick. This guy's a hard worker. He got great size. He's going to be an outstanding guard. His work ethic is tremendous. He comes in from SMU, the same place that produced Tenderfoot, Emmanuel Sanders. So now at least we got somebody from SMU that we can count on to be on the field game in and game out.
Well, I thought we'd get more guys in the 6th and 7th round as offensive linemen, so that was right in my book, and I understand that. And to get another guy where they say catch in front of Gay, now we'll have to change the name. So it won't be too hard there, Smoking Jim. We can do it as Steeler fans.
Well, overall, I guess, like I said, I think the Steelers, they got a great pick with DeCastro, another great pick with Ta'amu. I guess if you get two players like that in one draft, I think you're doing pretty good. Adams and Rainey and Spence. I'm not sold on them yet, but I know almost everything, but not exactly everything. So I guess overall, I'd say a C. I guess, guys.
Yeah, I would say a C, and then and we shall see.
Yeah, below sea level.
I'll give him a B because I'm hoping that Smoking Jim's pick of Clemens rises up, cream of the crop there, and he puts us over the top. And Adams reads the playbook instead of going to school, so he studies up and he performs like he should.
Sounds like a Homer grade to me.
I got a question for you guys. The mistake by the late Cleveland. I thought they did an excellent job.
Yes, they did.
In drafting Richardson. However, I had to put an asterisk by it because and I'm not so down on Cleveland for taking a 28-year-old quarterback, Brandon Wheaton. But I felt like in the first round, if you're going to take Brandon Wheaton as your quarterback, why in your earlier first-round pick you don't take Justin Blackman, his wide receiver from Oklahoma State? So I was big on the picking Richardson until they took Brandon Wheaton. If you take Brandon Wheaton, then I think you take Justin Blackman to give him something that he's familiar with, because he's got to play right away at 28 years old. They're trying to deal Colt McCoy. I think the team that did the best in the draft was Indianapolis Colts. They drafted Luck in the first pick, and then got in the second round got his great tight end, 6'6" guy, and then in third round drafted another tight end. And I think that's perfect because now you're surrounding Luck with some weapons, and you're surrounding him with tight ends because Luck doesn't have the big arm to go downfield. He's more comfortable throwing the tight ends.
Well, I think one thing that's going to be consistent about Cleveland is that it's turning into a graveyard of first-round quarterback picks, because they haven't had a quarterback there since they came back in 1999 when they took the illustrious Tim Couch. They're still beating on his bandwagon, but the Browns are just they're snake bit. They did take Trent Richardson. I think it was a great pick for them to take. I just hope that they don't ruin him as most of their other first-round picks.
And then you look at Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody's high on Cincinnati because they had 10 picks, but I look at what they didn't get. I don't know how you lose in free agency Jerome Simpson. He's the guy that did the somersault for the touchdown. You already had Green, a rookie sensation at one receiver. You got Jerome Simpson, who looks like he has Pro Bowl potential at the other receiver. Then you got the young quarterback. So
Simpson is another one of those guys. That I keep a garbage bag full of weed in my apartment. Just for personal use.
I think over the years there's been like 30 players like that for Cincinnati. Why make an example out of a guy that's got Pro Bowl potential? All the mother bums.
Does Marvin Lewis attract that there, or what?
Well, no. What surprises me about that is that Marvin Lewis keeps his job year in and year out.
He has pictures.
Because they've been perennial losers. Last year they had an up year, and they usually follow one up year by about 6 or 7 down years. Because they're due for another 4-12 season, and and I think it may because they get too impressed with reading their press clippings, and not with what they need to do on the field.
Good point.
I think that the draft greatly improved Cleveland. Maybe they could have picked up a wide receiver, but I think that Trent Richardson, not only the best running back in the draft, probably the best football player in the draft. I think that he is going to help them out a lot. Obviously, they have to build around him. He's not going to turn the tide in 1 year, but he's a player that they can build around. Whedon is he's a pretty good quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do to try to beef up the receiver core, but I think with that running back, it's going to, they're going to look like a running team for a while until they can put some other weapons around Whedon.
Good point, Magic.
Well, part of how they pick is that's why they're Cleveland. They're traditional like that. They can't help themselves. But what do you think about the Baltimore Ravens and what they picked? And how did they do?
Well, as long as they got the greatest player in NFL history, Ray Lewis, they always
Trying to help
Oh, I
you.
thought you were talking about the greatest quarterback in the NFL, Joe Flacco. Self-proclaimed, of course.
Yeah, where was that coming from?
So long as you got Sugar Ray Lewis out there, it don't matter who they draft. It doesn't matter at all because you come in and you play with Ray Lewis.
Did you hear
and,
what
you always got a shot at the Super Bowl.
John Harbaugh said on a
like
radio
that.
station
I like
today? How he said that the Patriots Super Bowl championships were tainted. They should have asterisks because of Spygate, and then he also lumped in the New Orleans Saints. And then after he realized what he said when he got back out in the car and heard everybody blowing up, and then he adjusted what he said, and he goes, oh, no. He goes, I called Sean, and I called Coach Belichick, and I have the utmost respect for them. And, oh, yeah, like Teddy Bruschi said, they earned each one of their championships. But, I think each of those were tainted because of the circumstances that surrounded it.
Doesn't our friend the Scout always say that I can't mention this place? So he mentions it. They stole a page out of Smoking Jim's book and Mike's book when he says, I don't want to talk about this guy that wrote that column, and I don't want to write about that team or that station. So he knew what he was doing, and he's just trying not to get fined for that.
Well,
that was his
Harbaugh,
move.
he changed after he got a phone call from Roger Goodell, who just got done finishing chest bumping all the walk-on free agents.
No, the hugs.
Yeah,
Wait a second, I'm involved in some hugging
yeah,
things.
that's right.
I got a hug-a-thon coming on, and we're going to have to teach proper technique for hugging, because what were those 2 and 3 minute hugs with these guys?
Here's the one thing I want to hear. The next thing I want to hear out of Roger Goodell is, when is the NFL Players Association going to give him permission to punish the rest of the Saints for bonus gate? Is he waiting for an engraved invitation? He keeps on saying that the investigation is wrapping up and punishments are coming. I'd like to see it happen sometime in my lifetime.
Oh, he's trying to get the players' union on board, but they don't want other
He
people
shouldn't
getting.
have to ask their permission to
That's
punish
my
them.
point.
It's the NFL. It's not, they work for the NFL, not the
Well,
other way
then
around.
you go back to Spygate. Why wasn't Belichick suspended or
He
anything
destroyed
like
the
that?
evidence. There's no evidence. He
Well,
destroyed it.
why did the evidence disappear? We talked to Mr. Conspiracy here. There's definitely a problem with the powers that be. And Mr. Kraft's a nice guy, the owner of the team. How can you punish his team? So these things happen.
That Spygate thing is so overrated. Every team has tape on every other team.
Yeah.
I mean, they tell you, they sit in the go to practice,
Yeah,
they watch tape on each
They
other.
don't get caught, though. That's the problem.
What they were taping was not the plays on the field. They were taping the coach's signals so that they could,
Right, I
try to
understand that.
get some type of insight. So, it's a little bit different.
But the question I think that everybody wants to ask and nobody's asking, is it time for the University of Pittsburgh to go down to a Division II school? They had 0 players get drafted in this NFL draft. So, I
think that's a testament to Todd Graham's coaching abilities. Thank God he's in Arizona.
Right. It makes you wonder. That is a thought that we were thinking about here, Smoking Jim. But we'll let the season progress, and maybe Tino will be that draft pick coming up, right?
Are they not a Division II school?
That's a good. Let's research that.
Like, just because they started off the season against Joe's Barber College?
No, not because they start the season off against Joe's Barber College, because Joe's Barber College is going to beat them. That's why. They're never. Well, I mean, again, this last one was a fiasco. But all those years under Wannstedt, they routinely got beat in one of the first 3 games by a school that had no business beating them because the man could not prepare them to play. They didn't get into game shape and prepared to play until as the season went on. Whatever they did in training camp, who knows? But that team got better as the season went on. And they were never prepared to play at the beginning.
Yeah, because most college teams, their first 6 games are against cream puffs, so everybody's 6-0 until they get into their conference games, and if they can win half of them, they have a great season. But Pitt never seemed to get that down right because they would do well in their conference games, but they'd end up 2-4 coming out of the games that they should win.
Well, not to be controversial, but I still like Dave Wannstedt.
Okay, well, that was enough of that, I guess. That's all you had to say? You still like Dave Wannstedt? Why?
Hey,
I like Dave Wannstedt.
You know what? He'll do great things with the Buffalo Bills defense because that's what his niche was. He was a great defensive coordinator. He helped build the Cowboys dynasty of the early '90s. As much as it pains me to have to say that, with
Thanks,
Jimmy
Chip.
Johnson as his, as Jimmy Johnson's defensive coordinator. And, they won back-to-back championships. He won a national championship as defensive coordinator at Miami. He just never seemed to be the man to be able to make all the decisions as a head coach. And, some people just have their niches. Dick LeBeau, an absolute wonderful defensive coordinator, but when he got his chance as a head coach, he didn't do so well.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people, like, they're good head coach, they're good recruiter, whatever it is that they talk about in college stuff. Some coaches are good as a defensive coordinator. They're good at training their players, maybe good at recruiting players, whatever. Good at teaching their system. But some people, like I don't know, they talked about Bill Cowher, for example. That I know Jim likes this guy a lot. I think he's right up there with Rich Kotite. But anyway, they talked about Cowher, how he's a great motivator and he's a great players coach. What he was not was a good game day coach. A guy had no idea how to control the clock. He could not adjust the team, but they could prepare the team to play. Some guys, possibly like Wannstedt was never able to adjust what he was doing in the middle of a game to take advantage of what they saw or to try to stop something. Whatever game plan he went in with, that's what his game plan for the game. Right. And you tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right, because he'd go in with his game plan and then he'd end up down to 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he didn't have a plan to get back from such a big deficit.
He couldn't adjust. So, well, it's a lot of football we talked about. Chip, you're our Pirates guy. 10-2.
10-2.
Not too bad. It's not 500, but not too bad.
It's not 500, but you look at what the Pirates did in the first month of the season. Okay, now they've got a team ERA of 2.75, which is absolutely phenomenal. Their team batting average is down near the bottom of the league, but even though their batting average is down near the bottom of the league, they're still 10-12. You look at teams like the Kansas City Royals; they've won 5 or 6 games. Look at the Los Angeles Angels. Okay, they spent over $250 million on C.J. Wilson and Albert Pujols, and they've only got 7 wins. I think the Pirates' bats are starting to come around. Last night they had a little bit of an offensive explosion. It's nice to see Pedro Alvarez putting a few balls into the seat, and I think bit by bit he's going to gain his confidence back. And as the temperatures start warming, I think so will his bat, and I think the Pirates can be a competitive baseball team throughout the rest of the season, because I tell you, the games that they're losing are games that they could very easily have won a hit here, a hit there. And Clint Hurdle's a great manager. He doesn't make all the right decisions all of the time. There's some things that I'd like to see him do about moving some runners up in certain situations. I don't think you do it in the first inning of the game, but 5th, 6th, as you get closer to the end of the game and it's a 1-run game, every run is important, and you need to do something to get that. We got 1 out and somebody on first. You need to get them over into scoring position so that we can win. But I think what the Pirates are showing is that they're putting a good enough product on the field to be competitive in the major league. And I'm looking forward to what's going to happen the rest of the season. It's got me excited.
One of the key things that you alluded to is there's 5 starting pitchers, and they're all under 3 runs per game. That's the key. Now, to me, they say we're at the same record we were last year. So it makes you wonder if we're going to get a hot streak and they'll hit a little bit. But are they going to play more than 100 games this year? That's the question that I have, Chip, because I'm starting to step on the bandwagon. Because another interesting stat, I think we have 13 home runs. Pedro should have been in the minor leagues, and I was wrong. He has 5. But the pitchers have kept the other opposing teams to only 13 home runs. And their batting average is almost as low as ours. So that's why we're winning right now.
Right, and to speak to your point, yes, we played 100 games last year, and they played their hearts out in June and in July. At May and June, they played their hearts out, and they found out that, you know what, we have to play 6 months. The season's 6 months long. You know, they're all a bunch of young ball players. That was the first time that they were ever competing on an equal level with a lot of teams last year. And I'm looking at that as being a learning,
hopefully,
part of the learning curve, so that what we do, okay, we did great last year, but you know what? There were still 2 months of the season left to play. I think that can be nothing but a positive for them, and I don't see them reverting back to those ways. But I like to look at the glass as being half full.
I got to interrupt this love fest for a second to address the Albert Pujols thing. I know he went through the entire month of April without hitting a home run for the California Angels, but the man's obviously hurt. In addition to signing his contract, he actually tried to lift it and strained his back. Anything with that many zeros has to weigh an awful lot. I think that as the back heals, you'll see Albert come alive again. The Pirates, they're on a great, they're right now, compared to what the Pirates usually do, they're on a great little stretch. The pitching's very good. The bats every once in a while try to complement the pitching, but like last year, they're relying on the pitching all the time. That is what hurt them in the long run last year. Hurdle beat up his entire pitching staff. Too many pitchers every game. He needs to not do that. I don't agree with Chip that he's a great manager. Right now, I'd say he's about adequate. And also don't agree with, being the Pirates and being on their bats being the way they are, I don't care if it's the first inning through the 9th inning. If you have a guy on first base, you have to do whatever you can to get him over to second. You have to try to score a run whenever you can. That's my thought on that.
And I respect your opinion on that, Mike. And my reason I'm so high on Clint Hurdle is I looked at John Russell, the previous manager of the Pirates, and I sat through about 8 or 9 home games during the 2010 series, and I never saw anybody that was not interested in baseball as John Russell was. And he didn't have any passion for the game. It was basically he watched the game. He didn't manage the game. And I see Clint Hurdle as being more of an active manager and trying to make moves. And yes, I do believe that there are some better decisions that he could make at game times. But I like somebody that's willing to try. And, you win a few, you lose a few. But at least he's out there managing the team and showing some passion.
Well, that comparison's kind of weak. Looking at John Russell and saying, boy, should be a manager is like looking at Charles Manson and saying, boy, should he be Pope.
Whoa, not that close.
Russell was horrible.
But he was passionate inside.
They lost the game 10-0 to the Reds. And he came out on his post-game interview said, there's a lot of good things we can take from this. Like what? Nobody died on the field?
Russell,
good from a 10-0 loss.
Russell was not a good manager here. It kept the philosophy of the lower bar. So I disagree with Chip on comparing him to Russell. And his emotion was all bottled up inside. If you saw the beautiful wife he had, that was probably why he was so bored with baseball. And I like Dave Wanstead.
Okay. Anything to say about Babe Ruth in the last few seconds?
Babe Ruth, this was 65 years ago. This was his final season. Look in the record books. Well, they only lasted till May.
Guys, that was a great show. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. And we will see you again next week.